The Tactical Operations Center fell silent until Staff Sergeant Williams's impatience boiled over. "Confirm the target acquisition, Corporal Davis," he commanded, frustration evident in his voice. The unremarkable woman in standard-issue gear leaned back in her corner chair and heard 6 words whispered through the sniper's comm that changed everything. The effect was immediate. The team leader's tactical pen clattered to the metal table. Senior operators froze at their monitoring stations and faces drained of color throughout the facility. No one had expected a sniper to know her real name. No one had expected the quiet woman from logistics support to be connected to a classified operation spanning decades. No one had expected the truth. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story captivated you, please consider subscribing. We share powerful stories of unsung heroes every week. The underground tactical center hummed with the constant buzz of electronic surveillance and hushed conversations. Banks of monitors cast green light across focused faces, illuminating target zones dotted with red hostile indicators and blue friendly positions. The air carried the scent of strong coffee and electronic equipment, mixed with the tension that came with monitoring live sniper operations. It was 1,400 hours on what had begun as a standard afternoon mission at Forward Operating Base Blackwater, carved deep into the Syrian mountains. Corporal First Class Elena Vasquez sat at her assigned logistics station, deliberately unremarkable in her standard combat fatigues and regulation headset. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, no visible markings except for her identification tags. Mid-20s, with an observant face that spoke of intelligence rather than ambition. Her brown eyes moved constantly between supply manifests and computer screens, while her presence demanded nothing from the intensity around her. To a casual observer, she might have been any support personnel, a recent graduate from supply training perhaps, or another face in the endless rotation of logistics staff. She occasionally made notes in a standard military clipboard, her handwriting neat and precise. Unlike the operators and senior NCOs who filled the tactical center with their specialized patches and combat credentials, she wore no visible markers of advanced training or field experience. Just a soldier, it seemed, with a basic clearance and an assignment to track equipment and supplies. The operation underway involved a precision elimination mission targeting Commander Hassan al-Rashid, a high-value target responsible for coordinating insurgent attacks across the region. The mission had progressed through standard phases: target confirmation, environmental assessment, and now final positioning with the sniper team in Overwatch 800 meters from the target building. Master Sergeant Thompson, a veteran special operations coordinator with something to prove, managed the tactical communications with practiced efficiency, moving between workstations and checking status displays throughout the operations floor. Commander al-Rashid had established patterns that made him vulnerable to precision targeting, Thompson explained to the watch officer, his voice carrying across the communications bay. His decision to maintain regular meetings at the compound created predictable windows for engagement. Staff Sergeant Williams sat rigid at the command console, his face a careful mask. A decorated sniper instructor with 15 years of service, he looked somehow exhausted in his desert camouflage utilities, as if the weight of the targeting decision had physically aged him in recent hours. Elena watched it all, her expression revealing nothing. Only the occasional adjustment of her supply clipboard suggested any emotional response to the ongoing operation. When the watch officer called for a logistics update, heads turned in mild surprise as Elena raised her hand slightly from her position at the supply station. Corporal Vasquez has been tracking secondary equipment manifests, Master Sergeant Thompson announced. She may have additional intel on target infrastructure. She moved to the central briefing area with a deliberate precision that seemed at odds with her support role. Something about her bearing, spine straight, steps measured, chin level, caught the attention of a silver-haired colonel seated near the main display. He frowned slightly, studying her with newfound interest. Staff Sergeant Williams, sharp-eyed and methodical, watched her with narrowed attention as she prepared her report. The sergeant was known for his no-nonsense approach to mission planning and operational precision. Today, he wore his authority like a burden, his desert uniform crisp despite the afternoon heat. "Please state your findings for the record," instructed Staff Sergeant Williams. Corporal First Class Elena Vasquez, Logistics Support Specialist, she replied. Her voice was soft but clear, her military bearing perfect. Master Sergeant Thompson began his questioning, and Elena's responses were factual and precise, but delivered in such a measured, quiet tone that Staff Sergeant Williams soon grew visibly impatient. Several times, the operations recorder had to ask her to repeat her statements. Corporal Vasquez, Staff Sergeant Williams finally interrupted. The entire tactical team needs to hear your intelligence clearly. Please speak up. Yes, Sergeant, Elena responded, barely raising her volume. Master Sergeant Thompson continued. Corporal Vasquez, can you explain your analysis of the target building's infrastructure? I've been reviewing construction manifests and cross-referencing building materials with known defensive modifications, she replied, her voice still frustratingly soft. I've identified several discrepancies in the standard construction reports provided for this facility. And what were your findings? I determined that the building specifications suggest reinforced positions that aren't reflected in our current tactical assessment. I also noted significant variations in material deliveries that indicate potential underground defensive positions. Did you document these observations? Yes, I logged all manifest discrepancies and attempted structural analysis on available blueprints. Was this analysis reviewed by intelligence? It was not forwarded beyond my immediate supervisor. The intelligence officer, Major Patricia Cruz, approached for additional questioning with a skeptical demeanor. Tall and commanding, with prematurely gray hair that lent her an air of authority, she moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to challenging questionable intelligence reports. Corporal Vasquez, what specific engineering training qualifies you to analyze building defensive modifications? I completed basic structural assessment during my initial logistics course. And what level of proficiency? Her tone suggested the answer would confirm Vasquez's limitations. I achieved standard proficiency ratings for supply chain analysis. Elena responded evenly. Major Cruz smiled thinly. Corporal Vasquez, how could you possibly understand the complexities of defensive architecture and tactical positioning when you've been managing supplies for only 8 months? Something flickered across Staff Sergeant Williams's face. A brief shadow of recognition quickly suppressed. He studied Elena more intently now. Objection to characterization, Master Sergeant Thompson called out. Corporal Vasquez's analysis should be evaluated on merit. Sustained, Staff Sergeant Williams replied, his eyes never leaving Elena. Major Cruz adjusted her approach. Let me rephrase. What specific field experience do you have with Siren building techniques in operational environments? Elena paused before answering, her eyes briefly meeting those of the silver-haired colonel near the main display. My background includes some practical application of structural assessment, she said carefully. Could you be more specific? That information involves previous assignments that may not be relevant to current operations. Major Cruz looked to the commanding officer. Sergeant, if the corporal lacks relevant field experience with regional construction, her interpretation of building specifications should be considered accordingly. I'll allow the line of questioning, Staff Sergeant Williams ruled. Corporal Vasquez, please provide more detail about your relevant experience. Elena's expression remained neutral. My previous assessment experience involves classified training programs. How convenient, Major Cruz remarked dryly. So we're expected to give weight to your structural analysis without knowing your actual qualifications to make such interpretations? I'm reporting on discrepancies I identified using established logistics protocols. As the questioning continued, Elena responded with increasingly precise details about construction techniques, defensive positioning methods, and structural vulnerabilities that made several tactical officers in the operations center exchange glances. She referenced specific building materials, defensive configurations, and security measures that seemed beyond the knowledge base of a standard logistics operator. When shown a blueprint of the target building, her eyes lingered on it a moment longer than necessary, her composure wavering almost imperceptibly before returning to professional detachment. Do you recognize this structure, Corporal Vasquez? Major Cruz asked. Yes, it's the compound where Commander Al-Rashid conducts his operational meetings. And your analysis of this building proved to be, what exactly? The intelligence you gathered about defensive modifications. How does that affect current targeting? Elena's voice remained steady. The structural modifications I identified indicate enhanced defensive positions that aren't reflected in our current sniper positioning. My recommendation for alternative approach vectors was documented in my daily logistics summary. In the operations center, the older colonel with silver hair and multiple deployment ribbons watched Elena with growing intensity, his brow furrowed in concentration as if trying to place a half-remembered voice from mission briefings. The afternoon hours passed as Master Sergeant Thompson returned for follow-up questions, asking Elena about specific equipment requirements for the current operation. Can you explain the standard supply protocols for a precision targeting mission of this nature? Thompson asked. The sniper team would have established primary and secondary equipment caches with base operations, she explained, her voice still frustratingly soft. Standard protocol requires verified ammunition counts and backup equipment confirmation at predetermined intervals. And if those supplies were compromised or insufficient, the backup team would deploy using alternative equipment configurations after primary supplies were assessed, utilizing specialized ammunition types on confirmed weapons systems. She explained with a level of technical precision that raised eyebrows among the tactical staff present. Staff Sergeant Williams leaned forward, his patience visibly wearing thin. Corporal Vasquez, I've asked you repeatedly to speak up. This operations center cannot properly evaluate intelligence it cannot hear clearly. I apologize, Sergeant, Elena replied, her volume barely increasing. The older colonel in the operations center now sat forward at his workstation, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. Recognition seemed to be dawning slowly, his expression shifting from curiosity to something closer to alarm. Major Cruz seized on the sergeant's frustration. Perhaps Corporal Vasquez's reluctance to speak clearly reflects her limited confidence in her own analysis. Master Sergeant Thompson stood immediately. Ma'am, that's inappropriate speculation. Noted, Master Sergeant. Staff Sergeant Williams replied sharply. Major Cruz, confine your remarks to relevant questions for the corporal. Major Cruz nodded in acknowledgement. Corporal Vasquez, in your assessment as a logistics specialist, was there anything about the building analysis you conducted that would indicate modified targeting requirements? Elena looked directly at the main tactical display for the first time. The structural assessment suggested defensive modifications beyond current intelligence estimates. That wasn't my question. Based on what you analyzed, should targeting procedures have been modified? Based on the structural discrepancies I identified, yes. But my assessment was not included in operational planning. Major Cruz's expression hardened. Are you suggesting that intelligence information was deliberately ignored by tactical staff? I'm stating that the structural analysis I provided differed significantly from the building assessment that was distributed to sniper teams. The operations center stirred with murmurs. Staff Sergeant Williams tapped his pen once against his desk, restoring order. Corporal Vasquez, Staff Sergeant Williams said, his voice tight with growing impatience. You'll need to explain that assertion clearly and audibly for the tactical staff. What specifically was different about your analysis? Elena paused, her eyes scanning the operations center briefly before returning to the sergeant. When she spoke, her voice remained soft, forcing everyone to lean forward to hear. My structural analysis indicated that the compound included reinforced sniper positions using specifications normally reserved for high-security military installations. That information was not included in the tactical briefing provided to sniper teams. Staff Sergeant Williams's head snapped up, his carefully maintained composure cracking for the first time. The silver-haired colonel's expression darkened as he studied Elena with new intensity. Corporal Vasquez, Staff Sergeant Williams said firmly, frustration evident in his tone. This is the final time I will ask you to speak louder. The entire tactical staff must be able to hear intelligence reports accurately. Elena looked directly at Staff Sergeant Williams. A look of quiet recognition passed between them, though the sergeant quickly masked it with professional detachment. The veteran colonel in the operations center was now gripping his workstation, his knuckles white. Staff Sergeant Williams finally interrupted with visible impatience, leaning forward at his command console. Corporal Vasquez, we don't have all day. Speak louder, or we'll move on to other intelligence sources. The operations center fell silent. For the first time since beginning her report, Elena looked directly at Staff Sergeant Williams. A look of quiet recognition passed between them, though the sergeant quickly masked it. The silver-haired colonel near the tactical display leaned forward, his hands gripping his workstation. Suddenly, an urgent transmission crackled through the sniper communication system in a calm, professional voice that cut through the static. Overwatch to base. Target acquired. Final confirmation required before engagement. Then, barely audible but unmistakable. Elena Reyes, if you can hear this, step forward now. The effect was immediate and electric. Staff Sergeant Williams's pen fell from his fingers, clattering loudly on his desk. Several tactical officers physically straightened at their workstations as if receiving an urgent alert. Major Cruz's face drained of color. The silver-haired colonel near the tactical display stood up involuntarily, then slowly sat back down. Complete silence fell over the operations center as recognition dawned across various faces. Some looked confused, others shocked, and a few, those who understood the significance of what they had just heard, appeared stricken. Elena continued in her normal soft voice, but now everyone was straining to hear. That sniper knows my real name because I was the intelligence analyst attached to Special Operations Task Force Viper 4 years ago. I was also the sole survivor of Operation Desert Cross, which Sergeant Williams personally coordinated 3 years before Commander Al-Rashid became a high-value target. She methodically produced a worn, waterproof intelligence device from her cargo pocket and held it up for the tactical staff to see. This contains encrypted mission logs from Operation Desert Cross, not the sanitized reports filed with Command. Commander Al-Rashid isn't just a target of opportunity. He's the same militia commander who betrayed my team after we discovered his connection to weapons trafficking across the Lebanese border. Staff Sergeant Williams attempted to call for order, but found his voice failing him. Corporal Vasquez, this is highly irregular procedure for intelligence reporting. My team and I were declared Kia in Operation Desert Cross. Elena continued calmly. I was the only survivor. I've spent 3 years working under an assumed identity and waiting for another operation to intersect with the same criminal network, not for revenge, but to prevent other soldiers from walking into the same trap. A younger tactical analyst near the communications base stood up. This is absurd. Specialist Reyes died in Operation Desert Cross. I processed her casualty report myself. The silver-haired colonel turned to address him. Sit down, Lieutenant, he said quietly. Look at her tactical knowledge. No one forgets a voice like that. Elena opened her intelligence device to reveal mission logs, coordinate references, and encrypted communication traffic. My team was betrayed because we discovered Colonel Marcus Kane was facilitating weapons transfers to militia commanders through a private security network, the same network that provided the false intelligence that led Commander Al-Rashid to our location. The operations center erupted into controlled chaos. Staff Sergeant Williams tapped his pen repeatedly on his desk, finally restoring some semblance of order. His face had lost all color, and his hand trembled visibly. This operations center will pause current operations for 20 minutes, he declared, his voice unsteady. But before anyone could move, Elena spoke again. With respect, Sergeant, that sniper has Commander Al-Rashid in his crosshairs right now. I've waited 3 years to speak. But this mission can't proceed with compromised intelligence. Staff Sergeant Williams slowly leaned back in his chair, his authority visibly shaken. He nodded once, a gesture of reluctant permission. Operation Desert Cross was classified above top secret, Elena continued. Our mission was to identify the source of American weapons appearing in militia conflicts along the Syrian-Lebanese border. We traced the weapons to a distribution network operating from a compound near Aleppo. What we found there was a sophisticated trafficking operation with financial records linking directly to Colonel Kane and his private security firm. She turned her intelligence device and removed an encrypted data chip. This contains transaction records, weapon serial numbers, and bank transfer information. We transmitted this intelligence before we were compromised. That transmission was intercepted and our extraction was canceled. Our team was left to die. Major Cruz stood, her voice hollow. I received direct confirmation from Colonel Kane that Desert Cross team had been confirmed Kia. The extraction was called off due to impossible tactical conditions. We weren't dead, Elena said simply. We were very much alive and calling for immediate extraction. I heard your voice on the command frequency, Major Cruz. You sounded confused, but you relayed the abort order. Master Sergeant Thompson approached Elena cautiously. Specialist Reyes, if what you're saying is true, how did you survive? And why assume a false identity for 3 years? Elena's composure never wavered. I survived because I was separated from my team during the final assault on our position. I was wounded, unconscious, presumed dead along with the others. Local refugees found me and kept me hidden while I recovered. By the time I was functional again, the official story was established. My team was dead. The mission had never existed, and Colonel Kane had been transferred to European operations. She looked around the operations center, meeting the eyes of several senior staff members. I needed time to gather evidence that couldn't be easily buried again. I needed to understand who knew about the weapons trafficking and who was simply following compromised orders. Most importantly, I needed to make sure no other soldiers would die because of the same corruption. The silver-haired colonel approached the central briefing area. Sergeant, request permission to address the tactical staff. I am Colonel David Martinez, retired Special Operations. I was the commanding officer for the Desert Cross team. He turned to face Elena. Specialist Reyes was one of the finest analysts I ever worked with. If she says her team was betrayed, I believe her without question. Major Cruz interjected. This is all highly dramatic, but it has no direct bearing on current operations. Commander Al-Rashid is a legitimate target due to tactical circumstances, not some conspiracy from years ago. They're connected, Elena replied. Commander Al-Rashid personally coordinated the ambush that killed my team because we were getting too close to the same weapons trafficking network. History repeating itself. Different mission, same betrayal, same source. She pulled another document from her intelligence device. This is a mission summary showing that my team reported weapons trafficking evidence directly to Colonel Kane 3 times before our final operation. We were told explicitly that pursuing the trafficking investigation would compromise critical operations. We weren't careless. We were set up. Staff Sergeant Williams studied the document, his command demeanor cracking further. These intelligence reports weren't included in the operational briefing I received for today's mission. Because they were deliberately removed, Elena said, just like the structural intelligence I provided was removed from current tactical assessments. And just like the weapons trafficking evidence was removed from Operation Desert Cross after my team was eliminated. The operations center had grown absolutely still. Every person present was aware they were witnessing something extraordinary. Even the communications technicians had stopped their routine monitoring, staring at Elena with undisguised astonishment. Master Sergeant Thompson approached the command console. Sergeant, in light of this new intelligence, I recommend immediate revision of targeting procedures and potentially reassessing Commander Al-Rashid's tactical situation. Staff Sergeant Williams nodded absently, his attention still fixed on Elena. Granted, all sniper operations will implement enhanced security protocols immediately. He paused, then added, Specialist Reyes will remain under tactical protection until these matters are resolved. As staff began coordinating the operational changes, Elena spoke again. There's something else you should know, Sergeant. She removed a final document from her intelligence device. This is the original authorization for Operation Desert Cross with your signature. And this, she produced another paper, is the abort order that condemned my team. The authorizing signatures don't match. Staff Sergeant Williams took both documents with trembling hands. Someone forged my signature on the abort order, he whispered, shock evident in his voice. Yes, Elena confirmed. You've been carrying guilt for a decision you never made. The abort order came directly from Colonel Kane's office. The retired Colonel Martinez moved closer. I always questioned why you would abandon that team, David. It didn't align with anything I knew about your operational philosophy. Staff Sergeant Williams looked up, visible emotion crossing his face. I've spent 3 years believing I made a call that got 4 good soldiers killed. I authorized the mission, but I never authorized abandoning them to die. The doors to the operations center opened, and a team of military investigators entered, led by a stern-faced full colonel. What is the meaning of this security alert? The colonel demanded. Sergeant Williams, I'm Colonel Patricia Foster from the Criminal Investigation Division. We received an anonymous intelligence package yesterday containing evidence of serious breaches of military law involving Colonel Kane and weapons trafficking. I understand there may be connected intelligence being reported in this operations center. Elena smiled faintly. Right on schedule, she murmured. Colonel Foster approached her. You would be Specialist Reyes, formerly of Desert Cross. I would be. We have extensive questions for you, Specialist. Starting with how you survived and why you assumed false identity. And I have answers, Colonel. 3 years' worth. The colonel turned to address Staff Sergeant Williams. With your permission, I'd like to take custody of the intelligence specialist Reyes has provided and arrange for her protection pending a full investigation. Staff Sergeant Williams nodded. Granted, but I want to be kept fully informed of any intelligence relating to Commander al-Rashid's current status. Of course, Sergeant. It appears several ongoing operations have been compromised by the same source. The operations center began to clear of non-essential personnel, but Major Cruz remained at her workstation, looking shell-shocked. Elena approached her quietly. I don't understand, Cruz said, looking up at her. Why would you help with this mission? I'm the one who relayed the abort order that left your team to die. Because you were another victim of the same corruption, Elena replied simply. You followed what you believed were legitimate orders from a trusted superior. The guilt should rest with those who manipulated you, not those who were deceived. How can you be so certain I wasn't involved? Elena allowed herself the smallest of smiles. Because I've spent 3 years studying every detail of what happened. I know who gave the orders and why. I know who altered intelligence reports and who profited from the weapons sales. Most importantly, I know you requested confirmation twice because you suspected something was wrong with the abort order. Major Cruz's eyes widened. How could you possibly know that? Those communications were classified. I had help, Elena admitted. Not everyone in the intelligence community was compromised. There are still good people within the system who wanted the truth to come out, and who wanted to prevent other soldiers from dying because of corruption. As she prepared to leave with Colonel Foster, the retired Colonel Martinez approached. Specialist, he said, formally, then dropped his voice. Elena, we held a memorial service. I spoke about your dedication to the mission. I know, she replied quietly. I read the transcript online. Thank you for honoring our sacrifice. What happens to Commander al-Rashid now? Elena looked at the tactical display showing the sniper team coordinates. Now we conduct a real operation with accurate intelligence and proper support. The mission can proceed because someone finally told the truth. The operations center remains suspended in a moment of shocked revelation. Staff Sergeant Williams slowly stood from his command console and removed his rank insignia, setting them on his desk before stepping down to stand on the same level as Elena. This command recognizes Specialist Elena Reyes, presumed killed in action, recipient of the Bronze Star with Valor, he announced formally, his voice carrying a weight of regret and respect. The retired Colonel Martinez approached Elena and rendered a perfect salute. Others throughout the operations center followed suit, a ripple of silent acknowledgement spreading through the room. Tactical personnel who had moments ago regarded her with skepticism now stood at attention, honoring a fallen comrade returned from the dead. Major Cruz, visibly shaken, stood to address Elena directly. I never knew who actually gave that abort order. I've been carrying this guilt for 3 years, believing I contributed to your team's death. I know, Elena replied. Your voice on the command frequency that day, I heard your hesitation. You questioned the order. Twice, Cruz confirmed, her voice breaking slightly. They told me I was risking additional lives by questioning operational decisions, that the intelligence had confirmed the entire team had been eliminated in the initial assault. Staff Sergeant Williams's professional demeanor cracked as he turned to face the tactical staff. I authorized Operation Desert Cross based on weapons trafficking intelligence that indicated a high-priority target. I did not authorize the abandonment order that came later. The signature was forged. You've been living with guilt that was never yours to bear, Elena confirmed. Colonel Kane used your command authority to cover his own criminal activities. Colonel Foster stepped forward. Sergeant Williams, I'd like to request a formal suspension of current operations while we secure this evidence and establish proper protocols for what happens next. This has implications for multiple ongoing operations and potentially dozens of personnel. Staff Sergeant Williams nodded. Current operations will continue with enhanced security protocols, but all intelligence assessments will be immediately reviewed for potential compromise. He paused. Major Cruz, in light of the evidence presented, you are relieved of any responsibility for the Desert Cross incident pending complete review of the circumstances. As military investigators began securing the operations center and escorting people to debriefing areas, Elena opened her intelligence device and carefully displayed photographs showing Colonel Kane meeting with known weapons dealers and militia commanders. This was never about punishment, she said softly, addressing the room at large. It was about preventing other soldiers from dying because of corruption and about making sure missions proceed with honest intelligence rather than criminal interference. As she descended from the briefing area, her shadow stretched long behind her across the operations center floor, the shadow of a soldier standing at attention rather than a support staff logistics operator. For a moment, she paused to look back at the tactical displays showing Commander Al-Rashid's elimination mission in progress. The tactical staff was coordinating with proper information for the first time in years. Staff Sergeant Williams was directing operations with restored confidence in his intelligence sources. Major Cruz was working to identify other potentially compromised assessments. Colonel Martinez watched her from near the command console, his face reflecting a complex mix of pride and determination. Elena gave him a small nod before continuing toward the exit with Colonel Foster. Her mission wasn't quite complete. There would be extensive debriefings, formal investigations, and probably congressional hearings. The full scope of the corruption would need to be exposed, and those responsible held accountable at every level. But the most important part was accomplished. The truth was out, and soldiers could once again trust that their intelligence support was working to protect them rather than serve criminal interests. As she reached the operations center exit, a communications technician approached. Specialist Reyes, Colonel Foster has arranged secure transportation for your continued protection. If you'll come this way. She followed the technician toward the exit, conscious of the eyes following her progress. Tactical staff, intelligence analysts, communications personnel. For 3 years, she had lived invisibly, unremarkable and unnoticed, gathering evidence while pretending to be someone else. Now she walked openly, her identity reclaimed, her purpose fulfilled. The older veteran caught up with her just before she reached the exit corridor. Specialist, he said quietly. What you did, surviving, maintaining your cover, gathering evidence, coming forward at the right moment. It was extraordinary. I had a duty to my team and to the soldiers who came after us, she replied simply. It was more than duty, he insisted. It was courage of the highest order, and intelligence work of a quality that saved lives. Elena allowed herself a small smile. You taught us well, Colonel. I taught you procedures and protocols, he corrected. What you demonstrated today, that came from within. He watched her leave with the investigative team, then turned to Staff Sergeant Williams, who had joined them. Some heroes never get the recognition they deserve, he said quietly. They just carry the weight of protecting others. Staff Sergeant Williams nodded, watching Elena's figure disappear down the corridor. And some truths are worth waiting years to hear. The afternoon light continued to strengthen as Elena's escort vehicle pulled away from forward operating base Blackwater. Behind her, the operations center buzzed with renewed purpose as Commander Al-Rashid's elimination mission moved forward with proper intelligence support and adequate security measures. The tactical staff worked with restored confidence, knowing their assessments would reach operational commanders without criminal interference. Ahead lay the challenge of ensuring complete justice was served and that the full scope of the weapons trafficking network was exposed and dismantled. But for now, in this moment between what was hidden and what would be revealed, the simple act of speaking truth had transformed a routine logistics watch into something profound. The power of one soldier's quiet determination to honor fallen comrades and protect those who came after, even when it meant sacrificing years of her own life, to gather the evidence necessary to expose a betrayal that powerful forces had tried to bury forever. As her vehicle reached the main gate, Elena's radio crackled with an update from the operations center. Sniper Team Alpha has confirmed mission success. Target eliminated. All personnel secure. Elena closed her eyes and smiled for the first time in 3 years, knowing that this time, the mission proceeded with honest intelligence rather than criminal deception.